Hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jo Crotty. I'm the Director of the Institute for Social Responsibility and also Professor of Management here at ISR. And I'm here to introduce Chris, who I think you probably all know as the organiser or principal organiser of this year's Sustainability Festival, which we've supported Chris in organising to coincide with COP26. And there's certainly absolutely no way you could not have heard of COP26 because it's everywhere. That doesn't necessarily mean, of course, they'll make any great decisions, but I guess it gets people talking about sustainability for at least a week. Chris, I think, is going to give us a sort of overview of sustainability. He's going to give us an overview of the festival. The festival has got a different theme every day, some of which I thought were quite clever. So kudos to you for doing that. We've got speakers every day. We've got workshops, we've got demonstrations, and we've got a keynote speaker on Friday. So I'm going to hand over to Chris now. He's going to tell you about the festival, about sustainability, and kick off the festival. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Jo, very much indeed. Okay, so let me get control of the technology. So yeah, thank you, Jo, very much indeed, and also to the ISR for their support with this and other events that we're running as part of the big sustainability festival here at Edgehill University. Right, so, okay, the title of this talk I'm trying to do two things. I'm trying to tell you what on earth the Sustainability Festival is all about, and also the COP26 Climate Summit that the UK is hosting, of course, at the moment in Glasgow, both this week and also up to Friday next week. So what is this talk going to cover? What questions is it going to raise and try to answer? Okay, so this is kind of an overview of the talk. So we've got, where has the Sustainability Festival come from? It's going on all week this week, from today, Monday the 1st, or Move It Monday as we're calling it, to Friday the 5th of November. And behind the kind of festival is the story of SustainNET itself, a network community of people here at Edgehill University, and also our partner organisations that are around us in our local area and region. I'm going to be asking, why are we doing it in the first place, and why now? What is actually happening with the festival, and why you should come along to it. And lastly, kind of second half or 2/5 of my talk is on what is COP26 and why is it important. So, okay, first of all, where has the Sustainability Festival come from? Okay, so this is a big university level event. It's included a series of different people, a range of different people rather, from the university, 24 people in the planning group. But SustainNET is the main kind of driving force behind the festival. So most of the people involved in the festival are kind of SustainNET members or in some way linked to it. And it was our idea to have this big sustainability festival taking place to coincide with the first week of COP26. Now, SustainNET was established in February last year, February 2020, just before lockdown happened, before COVID hit, under the ISR umbrella. So we're kind of like a research group, technically under the ISR, kind of range of different groups that are linked to ISR, but we have 90 members. We're kind of a network community of 90 staff and student members from across the campus. And I think there's only one school where we don't have representation from at the moment. I won't mention who that is, but we are very broad-based. In addition to the 90 people in our network community here at Edgehill University, we have 30 local partner organisations with whom we work. Now, the ISR was very important in establishing the main founding partners that we established back with an event that we held with ISR support called Sustainability in the Region, where we brought about 18 local organisations to showcase their work in the parish church hall of Ormskirk Parish Church back on the 6th of November 2019. So over time, our membership has grown. We've now grown as well the number of partner organisations with us who have got some sort of sustainability focus as well. They've grown in number as well. We're trying to create network communities of people interested in sustainability, both on and off the campus. So that's really what SustainNET is all about, essentially. We're working on 4 main fronts. We're working on research. So we're trying to get research collaborations going around the themes of sustainability, interdisciplinary ones. So, for example, we've had some success with developing interdisciplinary research teams so far between geography, biology, and psychology. The second thing we're trying to kind of increase our kind of research capacity to work on sustainability themes here at Edge Hill. And we're just starting that process, but we've made, I think, a relatively good start, you could say. The second main front is on education, teaching and learning. And back in March this year, we held an online conference on education for sustainable development. That was a pretty successful conference. It was co-organised with us and one of our partner organisations, Liverpool World Centre. And from the conference, we formed a working group with about 16 different people involved in the working group, trying to get the university to integrate sustainability more into its curriculum. And I can talk a bit more about that work a bit later, but we are poised to actually make, I think, quite a significant impact in that respect over the next few months. The third front we work on is student engagement. It's trying to get students involved and engaged in sustainability work and issues. So about 30 of our SustainNET members are students from across the campus, and we're trying to get them to be more proactive in their in sustainability work. So, for example, one of our long-term aims is to get them to volunteer at our local partner organisations with whom we work, become more kind of politically, if you like, involved with new initiatives. And we've got, as a spin-off of SustainNET, a sustainability society affiliated with the Students' Union, and so then working autonomously as a group of students passionate about sustainability, trying to get some kind of work going on that front for us as well. Local community, well, I mentioned the 30 SustainNET partners. We've got about, of the 30 we've got at the moment who are SustainNET partners, we've got around 24 of them who will be showcasing their work at the festival in the hub over the next 5 days. I'll show you who they are in a moment. We'll go to the website of the festival and I'll show you who they are. So basically, what the festival is trying to do is to bring in some way all 4 of these different fronts in which we're working kind of together in some way, in a kind of like a celebration of coming back together after, you know, the COVID period where we've been in lockdown. We haven't been able to see each other. I mean, it's funny. I've been talking to people online with Teams and Zoom meetings for the last 18 months, and then seeing them for the first time in the flesh in the last few days. And so it's really been really nice to actually see someone you've been looking at your screen for a number of months and actually seeing what they look like and how tall they are and so on. So the main kind of aim of the festival is to really raise people's awareness about a knowledge of sustainability issues, is to hopefully lead that to them taking new actions in the change of behaviour or taking up new initiatives themselves on sustainability, and to make people feel that they're not alone, to connect people together who may share similar interests and goals on sustainability. So it's like a bringing together of people, a celebration of us coming back together again, talking about sustainability and what we can do. And we try to put on with this festival literally something for everyone. So our motto is sustainability for all, as I'll show you when we look at the program in a bit more detail. Now, in fact, what I'm going to do is take you to the Sustainability Festival website. This is the SustainNET website, and this is where you can find the Sustainability Festival itself, its own website. So I'm just going to now just come out of this PowerPoint and then go to the actual website here. So this is what the festival homepage looks like. What we have done is we've organized the festival over 6 different activity themes over the 5 days, each of those 5 days having a particular theme. Okay, so on Move It Monday, we're looking at sustainable transport and mobility kind of issues. So at the moment, there are some bicycle cooperative social enterprises, Bikeworks and Peloton Liverpool Cooperative in the hub, showcasing what they're doing on bicycle culture in our locality. Together Tuesday is about community and it's about bringing people together. So different community kind of projects going on in our local region, whether that's cafes or community farms and so on. And then we've got on Well Wednesday a focus on nature and habitats, the natural world. We've got a number of different wildlife organisations like Martin Mere Wetland Trust coming. We've got West Lancashire Rangers service, they'll be there on Wednesday. Thrifty Thursday is about recycling, reusing, reducing our use of things, and we've got a number of interesting organisations coming that day. We've got Plastic Tactics showing us interesting things, what they're doing to recycle plastic into interesting and useful kind of objects. And then on Footprint Friday, we've got a series of kind of energy-focused organisations looking at how we can decarbonise our society and our economy. So if I go to the community page, you'll get some idea of just how many organisations we've got coming onto campus. We've got actually over 30 organisations coming onto campus. Hopefully many of them which aren't SustainNET partners at the moment will become them and join our wider network community. So this is what's going on at the moment. That's what's happening on today. On Tuesday, I'll just kind of scroll down these pages so you get some idea of who's going to be there when. And then, you know, the actual 2 busiest days are going to be on Thursday and also on Friday. I'll let you kind of look at this at your leisure afterwards, but that's community, basically bringing local organisations onto campus, showcasing their work, get a chance for them to talk with you about their work and hopefully getting you maybe involved in some way in them. Now, tours. We've got a series of tours going on. Unfortunately, due to the bad weather, we weren't able to hold our bike tour around campus today. But we do have a series of other tours going on, basically to get to know how green our wonderful campus is. We do have some well-being walks going on every day by the festival table tennis table in the hub. We've got a micro litter pick going on Tuesday. I think that needs to be added to the page. It seems to have disappeared for some reason. We've got a green campus tour going on Wednesday. On Thursday, we've got a recycling kind of sorting challenge. And then we've got a green campus building of the buildings and infrastructures and systems going on the Friday. Okay, back to the third theme here, performances. We've got films. We've got poetry tomorrow morning in the Red Cafe. We've got dance, drama, and we've got art, an art exhibition, which is going to be, well, it's up there now, I think, being displayed in the Arts Centre foyer area by SustainNET member Claire Lana-Hassett. So a lot of interesting things going on in performances. We're trying to make this as kind of artistic and dynamic a festival as possible, something for everyone to inspire you to think about sustainability in different ways. We've got a series of talks going on as well. Please do support them if you can. There's a talk going on every day. Some of these are based on, actually got a few talks on careers for the students in particular. but we've got a range of different Edgehill University academics and also SustainNET partners coming to talk for us. So we've got Joe Pusey, who's going to talk about the journey of your household waste and recycling, and how the circular economy can help tackle the climate emergency. We've got a talk by Kate Gill-Martin on sustainable and local community-owned renewable energy. And we've got this big kind of high-profile talk given by Joshua Stiles, rising media star, who was a biology student a few years ago. He's trying to popularize the kind of study of plants, and that's taking place on Friday, lunchtime. Then we've got food, drink and shopping themes covered. We've got a number of different food, drink and shopping organisations showcasing their work in the hub as well, alongside the community themed organisations. We've also got a plants versus meat cooking and baking event, again organised by Claire. And in addition to food, drink and shopping, we've also got competitions running through the week. And details on this particular page with very good prizes, actually. They've been very good at the competitions team of the festival, picking up great prizes from local organisations and other places, also from university units. So have a look at the competitions going on. They're open to everyone except the festival organisation team, of course. So that kind of gives you an overview of what we're trying to do with the Sustainability Festival. We've got about 90 kind of events taking place as part of it. Just going back now to the PowerPoint. So, okay, why are we actually doing it? Why are we doing the festival? Well, I don't need to tell you all that, you know, sustainability is our future. We need to kind of try to bring about kind of a cultural change, a changing kind of attitudes and behaviours. Of course, you know, we can't simply rely on politicians and other key decision makers, like in business, to change our society and make it more sustainable. Technologies can help, policies can also help. What businesses are doing and other organizations also help. You know, they all kind of make some kind of contribution. But in addition to there being, you know, top down or top level kind of solutions and initiatives, there needs to be a bottom up cultural change. You know, we need to want to switch to an electric vehicle, for example. We need to feel comfortable with using renewable energy technologies, you know, to avoid fast, you know, getting snagged by fast fashion trends. Look at ways that we can reduce our consumption, because, you know, supply is driven by demand. So if we don't demand stuff, so much stuff, then it won't be produced in aggregate. No matter how much they, you know, producers try to sell us stuff, if we're not demanding it, it won't be made in the longer term. So we're trying to kind of get across the idea of people being empowered to be change agents. And the festival, as I said, brings people together, it connects people, it makes people feel they're not alone in doing something. I think that's really important when you'll feel that you're part of something bigger, that you don't feel that it's all kind of down to you and how you behave, that you're actually part of something else. So we're exploring how people, both individually and collectively, can make a difference, in a sustainability difference, and in many different ways. And we're hoping that, as my blog actually tried to put across the message when it was released, I think about exactly a week ago, of disrupting you. Yeah, we want you to kind of stop and think very hard about choices you're making, about how in the future you can be more sustainable. We want to bring about a real change. So that's what we're really aiming to do with the festival, to help you think about how you can make those kind of changes. We're also at an institutional level, SustainNET is trying to, you know, with other leads on sustainability on campus, to take the university to its next level of its sustainability agenda and ambitions. Now, we were voted Modern University of the Year, and I think for that to be kind of a legitimate claim, the university needs to be very forward-thinking on sustainability. And so there are a number of conversations going on at the moment, and I'm also the chair of the university sustainability group, where we are starting to, I think, bring about some sort of cultural change at our institution to get us more focused on a more ambitious sustainability agenda. So I'm very positive about that, optimistic. We can do that. We can take the university to the next level. So, okay, next question. Why are we doing it now? Well, Joe kind of helpfully answered this question for us. We purposely set the timing of the festival to catch the crest of the kind of media wave of attention on COP26 Climate Summit, which started really properly in Glasgow today. So there's going to be a lot of media attention on sustainability. So we thought this was an opportune time to have a sustainability festival of this scale. It's the biggest one we've ever done by far. The sustainability fair was nothing compared to what we're doing with this festival. And it was also the first opportunity really for SustainNET to actually plan anything kind of a physical kind of event like this as well, and a coming together of our members and others interested in doing something about sustainability in the kind of, now that COVID is receding and is more under control. I use my words very choicely there. So I've actually kind of answered this next question. I think I preempted it. What's actually happening? So I've been through this already. One thing I didn't mention in my overview of the festival is that we have a green zone meeting place in Hale Hall, that lovely oak or wooden panelled room adjacent to the hub, connecting it to what I call the power corridor, where the directorate and corporate communications are. And that's going to be a nice kind of gathering place, meeting place for you to, connect with people who are interested about sustainability, make new friends. There's going to be some other stuff going on there as well in the green zone. So watch that space literally. Right, okay. So talked about that. Why should you come along? Well, we're trying to aim for it to be a festival for everyone. Let us entertain you and at the same time engage you, inspire you, and connect you with others. And we're hoping you see the world and society around you in new and different ways, how we can be more sustainable. It's also a way for you to learn as well. It's kind of a knowledge exchange experience for you to meet other organizations, other people, get to know what their view on sustainability is all about. Improve your knowledge on sustainability, see how you can make a difference, maybe joining as a volunteer one of these organizations, or doing something together with your friends and colleagues. How you can learn to make a difference, both now and also through your life ahead. So, okay, that's the festival. That's what the festival is all about. Now let's look at what on earth is the COP26 Climate Summit all about, and why is it so important? Excuse me, just a quick pause for breath and water. So COP is an abbreviation for the Conference of the Parties, a really boring abbreviation. If it was Conference for Having Parties, it would be a much more interesting organization, I think, and a better abbreviation. But what COPs are essentially summits. So they bring together world leaders to talk about climate action. And they're the summit element of another long and rather boring sounding abbreviation, this being the UNFCCC. This stands for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which was established in 1992. Now, the UNFCCC is the main global organization trying to coordinate international efforts on climate change, mainly by getting agreements to reduce carbon emissions. So you may have heard of the Kyoto Protocol, which I'll come to in a moment. But it's not a body that has any kind of rules or regulations. It's not like the WTO, which has sort of legal rules that can be in some way enforced through certain mechanisms. It's a very intergovernmental based organization. It's trying to get nations to form a particular agreement about particular forms of action, but then it's up to each nation to take its own course of action to fulfill those goals. So it's trying to coordinate international efforts in that sense, and in one sense, coordinate international actions as well. So the COPs are held annually, and they're the kind of supreme decision-making mechanism of the UNFCCC. Now, what you've got is a situation where you've got good COPs, which are quite few, and you've got kind of bad COPs in one sense, in that many of these COP meetings do not actually lead to anything significant in terms of tackling climate change and reducing carbon emissions or other greenhouse gas emissions. Now, for example, if you took COP15 in Copenhagen in 2009, there was a lot of promise and a lot of kind of hope that COP15 in Copenhagen 12 years ago would lead to substantive action on climate change, but it never transpired. And this is quite typical of most COPs. There've only really been two very useful COPs, very, very good COPs. The first was COP3, held in Kyoto in Japan in 1997, which led to the Kyoto Protocol Agreement, which is the first major international effort to reduce carbon emissions. The second was, as you probably heard of this one, the COP21 Paris COP. This led to the Paris Climate Accord, which set goals for keeping the global average temperature rise within 2 degrees Celsius or 1.5 degrees Celsius, if possible, of pre-industrial levels since by 2050. Now, I'll just give you, I think in the next slide, I'm going to show you the historic accumulation of carbon emissions going back over the last 250 odd years. But what we mean by pre-industrial levels is before the Industrial Revolution started. So far, we've worked out through scientific data that the average global surface temperature has increased by about 1.1 or 1.2 degrees Celsius. But if you take all the carbon emissions from the Industrial Revolution, so we're going back to the late 18th century, up to 1990, okay, up to 30 years ago, if you take that wide range of emissions, that was something around just under 800 gigatons, billion tons of carbon emissions. Since 1990 to today, we've released even more in a 30-year period of emissions than the period up to 1990, about 830 gigatons. So we are adding an increasing rate emissions to our biosphere. Now, I'll come on to that in a bit. I'll just show you a bit of data in a moment. But the COP goals are based around, this is kind of in the context of what I said about international kind of efforts to reduce carbon emissions, and they're to be achieved by national determined contributions. So each country determines how much they're going to reduce their emissions by, okay, based on this overall goal, this kind of generic goal of reaching or not raising global surface temperatures on the planet by more than 2 degrees Celsius, or even better, 1.5 degrees Celsius pre-industrial levels. So these are kind of structured around national efforts, but the climate action requires a kind of effort from all, of course. It's not just about governments. You know, at the COP meeting, as I mentioned in a moment, at COP26, there'll be thousands and thousands of representatives from not just governments, but also business, civil society organizations, and of course, protesters. So this is a map of the COP26 summit. There's a blue zone here, which is where the leaders will be convening. This actually converts into a UN governed territory officially during the COP meeting. So the UN actually has jurisdiction over this particular part of Glasgow. And then across the waterfront from there is the green zone, where a number of public events are going to be taking place. Now, I actually tried to get tickets to one of these, but they were sold out very, very quickly. So I wasn't able to get tickets at that stage, but I'm hoping to get tickets when some are re-released later on this week. So this is the main, over here is the going to be the main venue for the summit. And it's a wonderful part of Glasgow, this waterfront. This is the inside of it here. They've created this kind of ceiling with a big globe around it, and so you can actually see the whole planet. I think it's quite a nice idea, that. And so what are they trying to do with COP26? They're trying to basically establish a rule book by which kind of a set of rules and agreed mechanisms by which the goal set by Paris of keeping global temperatures to that limit are actually achieved. So Paris actually set the goal, but not the actual mechanisms as such for achieving the goal. So according to the COP26 website, what are the main goals of this particular summit? In terms of mitigation, that is reducing carbon emissions, is basically to keep to the Paris goals. Adaptation as well is going to be another theme of this summit. That is, okay, mitigation is about reducing the causes of climate change. Adaptation is dealing with the consequences kind of it. So, flood defenses and protecting communities and natural habitats from climate risks. Because, as Greta Thunberg has said, as change is coming, it's happening already. Climate change is actually happening now. Finance is a third goal. Try to raise at least $100 billion every year for climate finance. They haven't done so well on that in recent years, but they're trying to kind of remind parties of this goal that they agreed to in Paris a few years ago. And then collaboration this is what I was talking about earlier, about setting in place the mechanisms by which to achieve the Paris goals, the so-called Paris rule book. And this will be probably the most important outcome and result of COP26, if we can get in place these mechanisms, agreed mechanisms by which we can achieve the Paris goals. Now, this is a graph going back to what I was saying earlier about where we currently are in terms of carbon emissions, right? So carbon emissions represent about 75 to 80% of all greenhouse gas emissions. This is what's been happening to carbon emissions over recent decades. Okay, this is when we started to use, just move the zoom bar over so I can see what I'm looking at here a bit more. What we've got here is we've got the contributions to carbon emissions by region of the world over that time. So we've got basically Europe here at the bottom, US, China up here. You can see that there's been a massive acceleration, especially since the 1950s. We call this, in fact, more broadly, the Great Acceleration. This is industrialization, population growth, and so on. And it just keeps on rising. So at the moment, we're pumping about 35 billion tons of CO2 into the atmosphere every year. Okay, so what's actually going to happen? Well, we've got negotiators from over almost 200 nations and leaders from 120 nations taking part in COP. We've got 25,000 representatives as well descending on Glasgow from different types of organizations. We're trying to build on what was achieved by Paris COP21. And we're going to expect also quite a bit of disruption on the streets as well. Organizations like Extinction Rebellion, striking bin workers, and so on. There's going to be quite a lot of drama, shall we say, on the streets. And will it turn out to be a good COP or a bad COP outcome? Well, we don't really know. I mean, there's a lot of geopolitical factors which make it quite difficult. So China, Brazil, Russia haven't sent their leaders there. the Saudi Arabian government have announced a 2060 net zero, but are still going to ramp up oil production over the next decades. You know, we just simply don't know what's gonna happen with this. It could go down the wire. Depending on which media you read, some people are a little bit kind of pessimistic. There's this distraction going on, this dispute between the French and the British over fishing rights, other stuff going on between the EU and Britain, post-Brexit stuff like Northern Ireland. There's all kind of background noise going on which may distract the government. A lot of people think that the government, UK government, could have spent a lot more time preparing for a COP. I can take questions on that and other stuff as well. But it's going to be kind of pretty super important, because for a good COP outcome, you really need a country, a host country, that's got the capacity and skillful diplomacy to be able to get an outcome. And I'm not really that convinced that this government's quite up to it, really, given past form. But happy to take questions on that. I think that's the end of my talk. So are there any questions? Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. That was such a good introduction to the festival. And
Very much.
It's so exciting to hear, you know, all the events that are happening on campus. So I hope everybody's going to go and have a look. I'd just like to say I really struck by what you said about this, you know, this need for bottom-up change. I think there's a sense of powerlessness. I certainly feel this sense of powerlessness at the moment, especially, you know, looking at the COP26 and worrying about what's going to happen. But I think, you know, to have the festivals, to bring people together and share some of these concerns and some of, you know, and also to celebrate what we are doing, I think is a really good thing.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you.
So let's see what we've got in the chat. I know we have got a question about how to become a SustainNET member.
Oh yeah, it's very simple.
Fantastic. Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, just email me, Catherine. Simple, and I'll make you a member.
Yeah,
so,
you
yeah.
go
I see
ahead,
Elena has asked, I was wondering what you thought about Insulate Britain. I find their cause very noble, but stopping traffic actually has worse car emissions unless the engine is turned off. So what could they do instead? Oh, is that a question about cars? I'll tell you what, Elena, why don't you email me that one? There's a number of, okay, so what you need is, okay, to deal with any kind of sustainability challenge, you need a combination of different things to make things work. So you will need technology, that's important. You need to have often policies to incentivize businesses and households to use the technology. And you need a kind of society that is conducive to actually embracing sustainability and wanting to be part of the solution and doing stuff. So one of the things I teach to my third level business students on sustainability in business is how societies, the Scandinavian societies, Nordic societies, have become are quite environmental in their kind of culture and their kind of behavior. And there's some reasons for that, but I think you need a combination of different things. It's not just a technological kind of silver bullet to solving these things. As I said in my piece on disruption, you don't just start mass producing electric vehicles rather than mass producing internal combustion engine cars. What you've got to try and do as well is have a cultural shift on car ownership and think about how we could share cars and using digital technology to create systems. And we're experimenting with these at the moment in different cities of how you can actually share a car, because you know your car normally when it's parked it won't do anything for like 90% of the day. It's just sat there, and that's a big metal box, whether it's electric vehicle or that takes actual emissions to make as well, that's sitting there doing nothing. So but in order to get people to think about sharing cars, there needs to be a cultural change about car ownership. So it's a combination of different things that are needed. So yeah, thank you. I'll stop there. Anyone else got any other questions?
There is a question from Catherine about accessing the competitions.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. Right, so I'll just go back to the website then, Catherine, the festival website. So you just go down to competitions. There's an email address for the Wildlife Ushers one, Litter Pick Challenge. That's just you turn up to the hub tomorrow, and so on. If you've got any questions on these, there's normally an email address for you to contact Catherine and others, you know, if you wanted to get involved in the competitions. We've got a green quiz as well going on Friday in the SU bar, organised by our friends in Friends of the Earth. So yeah, just email me if you have any questions and we'll sort you out. Okay, any other questions? Paul, hello Paul.
How you doing? I thought I'd ask a question about activism. So it links to an earlier question about Insulate Britain and so on. I had a session with my year 1 students at an environmental issues module last week, and the title of the session was the Paris Agreement. I use it to do all this kind of UNFCCC stuff in a one-hour, and it was obviously timed this year to hit that. I'm keen to build the environmental literacy of our students, as I know you do as well. And it's great fun, actually, lots of opportunity to get into contemporary issues and then talk to students about, you know, what can you actually do? What you know, how do people get involved? What are they? And I asked them, you know, what's going on now, do you think, in this sort of area? And I was hoping to get Insulate Britain come back as one of the answers. And it was the first answer. So then I asked my students, so you know, have you ever done any of this? What have you done in sort of environmental activism? And then before anyone says anything, I stop them and say, don't tell me, okay? I can't ask you this question because then I might be promoting illegal activity, because activism obviously oversteps the bound. And for me, it's raised really interesting ethical questions about what I'm allowed to impart to my students and what I shouldn't. So I sort of, you know, without saying so directly, hint that environmental activism is a very useful tool and it's a young person's game generally, and so on and so on. But then state very clearly and explicitly in my lecture, don't do this because I said so. You know, just you should take on board what you think. But people, you know, some of my students came back to me when I was asking them, you know, what do you think about this stuff? They said, well, I agree with the principle, but, you know, it's a legal activity, so it shouldn't really be done. And my view differs actually on that. I think activism is a necessary part of democracy to force through big change. I don't believe that political correctness can go mad, because you need people saying extreme things to try and actually get some way towards the middle ground, which is probably what you want eventually anyway. Thinking back to you know, 100 years ago, and the fight for women's rights and the actions that was required by the suffragettes to actually push through change. So what do you think about activism? And what do you think about the educator's role, your role, my role, in speaking and communicating with young people about activism, what we can see, what we can't see, what we should be promoting, and so on?
Thank you, Paul. Really good question. I mean, I think for me, I'm not too sure how to argue that question from a kind of legal perspective, but what I would say is that you're right. I think in some way, civil disobedience and disruption is often what you need to get change. Just as you know, the suffragette movement 100 years ago, the civil rights movement in the United States, you need to kind of in some way change the conversation to shift to a kind of a new paradigm of thinking. If you look at the environmental movement and how it started in the modern sense, which I actually teach my business studies students about this, because it's really important they understand where the cultural shift towards environmentalism and sustainability has come from. It's very closely linked to the counterculture movement of the late 1960s and early 1970s, of people actually questioning the principles on which, you know, modernity and industrialization kind of were based. That the way that we saw the world up to that point was essentially that humanity was the apex kind of species, that we subjugated nature to meet human needs. It's a very anthropogenic way of looking at the world. And what the counterculture movement and environmental movement of the 1960s and 70s, when it started then, started just to question, why? Why should we think that way about our planet? You know, like in economics as well, we tend to think about resources being like a kind of like a subset of the economy. Well, actually, the economy is a kind of a subsector of the biosphere. Without the biosphere, we can't have any economy or society. Yeah, we have kind of wrong thinking about stuff. And I think that activism, you know, mass participatory activism has a really, really important key role to play in just changing the cultural conversations we have. So, you know, I'm hoping that our students will actually really get engaged with these issues and want to become active in the broadest sense of the term. I'm not saying, you know, go and glue yourself to a train and tie yourself to a railway track, but I am saying get involved. And that's all I would say. And I have to speak to my lawyer about anything else I'd say in addition to that, Paul. Thank you. Lena, you have your hand up. Is that okay, Victoria? Can we take a question from Lena?
Yes.
Lena, hello.
Hi, hello.
Hello.
Good to see you. Thank you. I've written it out into the chat, but then, you know, we were asked to raise hands. Basically, I think what you're saying right now is really important. And, you know, how do we change cultural perceptions? And also, you know, how do we change these things which seemed impossible or they seemed not very likely and now suddenly are in public domain? So I'm quite worried about this new idea about carbon capture storage. I don't know if you've seen the announcement around the Northwest becoming a green region through kind of hydrogen/blue hydrogen and then carbon capture, which is very new technology and hasn't really been tried out. And it seems to me, from my limited perspective, I don't have much information on it, that this is very new. It's but it's also kind of suddenly starting us, making us think that how we can solve the problem is produce carbon emissions and then store them underneath in the ground, you know. So old gas fields become now carbon storage. To me, this is very worrying, but I wonder what you think. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. Well, you touched upon my kind of key research kind of area of interest and expertise, which is renewable and clean energy. So I'm familiar with the carbon capture and storage kind of technology and also green hydrogen. So I'm going to say this in the context of the current government's 2050 net zero kind of target. I've got only two problems with this net zero 2050 target. One is you should change the 5 to a 3, so it becomes 2030. The second thing is just get rid of the net, because we should be going for zero carbon emissions by then, if we can. So the net zero, what does net zero actually means? It means that you can, in the context of what you just said about CCS, carbon capture and storage, is that you can keep emitting, but if you are planting trees, it's fine, because, you know, if you're planting trees, you're creating carbon sinks, or if you're doing other stuff which actually can absorb the carbon or store the carbon, then that's fine. Keep on polluting, keep on pumping out those emissions. We've got this offsetting activities going on over here. Well, I think that's the wrong thinking. I think we should be not going for net zero. We should just be going for absolute zero. So carbon capture and storage, yes, okay, it's a useful technology, but, you know, unlike renewable energy, it doesn't actually produce any green energy. It doesn't actually produce anything. So, you know, switching from, say, for example, gas-fired power stations, which still make up about 40% of the UK electricity grid, to solar, hydro, wind, biomass, marine energy technologies. At least what you're doing there is you're actually creating new clean ways of generating energy. With carbon capture and storage, all you're doing is you're allowing emissions to continue, but you're not replacing it with anything, right? So the gas carbon emissions from gas power power stations, they're still going to keep going. But yeah, I just see with CCS in particular, I see an issue. On the green hydrogen thing, right? So just to put things in context, because when we talk about energy, we tend to fixate on electricity and power generation. Now, if you take what we call the primary energy consumption. That is all the different types of energy that we use, right? Electricity only accounts for 17%. 33% of all energy that we use is transportation, okay, if you kind of aggregate them all together, and 50% is on thermal. So if you take iron and steel alone, that accounts for between 7 and 9% of global emissions. One industry which has to rely on very high process heat to convert iron into steel, 12,000 degrees Celsius. Green hydrogen is some way of cracking that nut of providing cleaner energy for our kind of thermal industrial heat needs, also for cement, for aluminium, other strategic materials that we use to make various kind of things. So the technology can play some role, but it has to be the right technology. And some of the technologies are very, very experimental at the moment still. So if you look at ocean and marine technology like wave, tidal current, tidal barrage technologies, they're still quite experimental, but wind and solar have been rapidly growing very, very quickly, but that only really can cope with the electricity part of the energy equation. So China, for example, makes half the world's steel, half the world's cement, and half the world's aluminium. And they mainly use coal. They've actually been increasing the use of coal to make these different industrial materials. And we need to get them to stop doing that and using cleaner forms of energy. Green hydrogen is seen to be one of the most important new frontiers of renewable energy. But it's still quite experimental, it's still quite expensive, and it's still quite untested, as you hinted at. So thank you, Lena. Do you want to come back to me on any of those points? Or
thank you, Chris. No, I might want to pick up with you on an email correspondence specifically for the region, because that's what I'm interested in particular.
Yeah, great.
But yeah, thank you so much for explaining this. Thanks.
Thank you. Lena's doing fantastic work for us on SustainNET, by the way. And she's also doing a drama, climate action plays on Friday morning, which I would like to promote between 10 and 11 on Friday. Thank you, Lena. Great to see you.
Oh, well, thank you, everybody. That was great. Thank you, Chris. And I look forward to seeing everybody over the course of the week.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Hope to see you at the festival. There is literally something for everyone, sustainability for all. And get in touch if you need any more information about SustainNET or about what we're doing about sustainability across the Edge Hill. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.